Alright, so if you guys remember, in the previous tutorial we talked about something called as a ternary operator, which basically helped us in making decisions. But the problem which we were facing there was that if you wanted to have more than one choice, the things were getting very complicated. So I told you guys that we have something called as if, else and switch case for dealing with those issues, right? So in this tutorial we'll be talking about the if else, and in the next one we'll be dealing with the switch case. So again, what we are going to do here is we'll give the user four choices and we'll simply say whichever choice the user chooses, we'll say you chose this particular choice, right? So that's the code which we will be making here. So let's make an integer variable for reading the choice, and we'll actually go ahead and we'll display four choices for the user. So we'll say here's the menu sounds good to me, and we'll say one name, we'll give a tab, and age we'll give another tab. I'll say company and exit. Right, so those are the four choices which we'll be giving to the user. Now what we are going to do is, if the user enters choice 1, we'll simply say you wanted the name. If the user enters choice 2, we'll simply say you wanted the age, and similarly for other two choices. Obviously if the user chooses choice 4, the program should exit, right? So I'll also be telling you guys about something called as the exit function in just a minute. So let's go ahead and read the choice now. We'll say enter your choice, like that, and we'll be quickly reading the value for choice and storing it in the variable choice. All right, so now what we have done so far is we have displayed the menu here, and let's actually print it on the next line. It looks a bit beautiful that way. So we have actually printed the menu and we have taken the choice from the user. Now what we need to do is we need to check whether the choice is equal to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever value the user enters. Right, so we have four conditions here. We need to check the condition four times. Now if you actually go ahead and try doing this using the ternary operator, I bet 90% of you won't be able to do it, and the remaining 10% will be able to do it, but then it will get very complicated. So there is another very interesting way of doing that, and that is something called as the if else construct. Now if else is actually a single unit, it is not two different units, so to say. But what we can do is we can have the if without an else, but we cannot have an else without an if, right? So if can exist individually, but for an else to exist it should necessarily have an if before it, right? So this is the most basic syntax of if. The keyword we use is if, and there is this condition in the brackets, and whatever we want to do, if the condition is true, comes between these two curly braces. Now whatever comes in between these two curly braces, we call it a block, right? The curly braces along with the code in between is referred to as a block, so we call it the if block since we are dealing with the if a construct here. So let's enter the condition if choice is equal to 1. Now again, in the operator video I told you guys that whenever we need to compare any value, we need to use double equal to, because single equal to means assignment, which is always true, right? So what this means is that if the value of choice is equal to 1, go to the block and do this. So we'll say you ask for a name. Okay, so that is all we'll be saying in this. Now let's do something very simple very quickly so that we understand the else case. What happens is that if choice is equal to 1, we'll be doing this, and if we have something to display when the choice is not 1 or when this condition is false, right, that is where the else case comes in. We have else and we have the else block here. So we can actually go ahead and print you asked for a name, so we'll just say you did not choose 1, right? So that is what the if else looks. Basically, if the choice is true, do this. If the choice is false, or else, as we talk in normal English, do this. So if this is true, do this, else do this, right? But actually in our case we need not use else just yet. We need something very interesting apart from the else. That is something called as the if else if ladder, right? Now since we are dealing with four choices here, what we need to do is we need to nest these things. So we'll enter another if inside an else and say if choice is equal to 2, then do something, right? And again else here, and we'll again say if the choice is equal to 3, do something. So that is how we'll be going with all the four choices. Now if you guys observe closely, we get something, a sort of a ladder, right? If so this becomes a ladder. Now what happens when we remove these braces? Let's see what happens when we remove all the braces. That is where we get something called as if else if ladder. So there we got rid of all the braces, and let's get rid of the space between them as well, right? So perfect. So that is how the if else if ladder works. If choice is equal to 1, do this. Else if choice is equal to 2, do something else. Else if choice is equal to 3, do something else. Right. So this is what the if else if ladder looks like. Again, if the choice is 2, we need to print that you asked for age. Alright. And if the choice is 3, we need to print you asked for the company, right? So let's go ahead and do that for the company. Few typos here and there. Cool. And now we are done dealing with all the three choices, and we have only one choice left. So instead of another else if, we'll simply add an else, and we'll print that you chose to exit, and we'll be using something called as the exit function here. The syntax of exit function is this: exit and 0 here. Now I'll tell you guys what the 0 stands for. 0 is basically a code or a symbol which is returned to the operator, which basically means that there was no error while this program while this program actually quit. Because what happens is that if you enter a 1 or a negative integer here, the operating system actually searches for the error which caused this program to close, right? But while we are passing 0, we are telling it that hey, don't worry, we chose it, we closed it intentionally, there is no error, right? So that is what the exit function looks like. So let's try the code out now then. Okay, so enter your choice. Okay, I'll say 2. So it says you asked for age, which is exactly what I wanted it to, and I missed a T here. That was why it was showing abruptly in the previous one. Okay, now let's actually go ahead and try using the exit function. So I'll say 4, and as you can see, you chose to exit was displayed and the process exited with return value 0, which basically means that there was no error, right? So that is what the if else construct looks like. Again, quick recap: we can use an if individually, but whenever you're using an else, you need a preceding if, right? So also we discuss something called the if else if ladder, which comes very handy when we are dealing with multiple choices. So if you have only one choice, you can go ahead with if, but if you have multiple choices, the if else if ladder is recommended. But again, if the number of choices is more than say 5 or 6, this also becomes very lengthy and complicated. So that problem is taken care of by the switch case, which we'll be talking about in the next one. So now you know how to make decisions. Go and try some piece of code out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.